Good morning. Our text for this morning is Mark 1, verses 40 through 45. A leper came to Jesus begging and kneeling. He said to him, "If you choose, you can make me clean." Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said, "I do choose. Be made clean." Immediately the leprosy left him, and he was made clean. After sternly warning him, he sent him away at once, saying, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priests, and offer your cleansing, what Moses commanded as a testimony to them." But he went out and began to proclaim it freely, and to spread the word, so that Jesus could no longer go into a town openly, but stayed out in the country. And people came to him from every quarter. Word of the Lord.
Praise God.
My name is Jeff, and I have dandruff. I've been struggling with this issue for as long as I can remember. Those guys you see on TV, the happy, cheerful people with their happy, cheerful black turtlenecks, I can tell you one thing. Whatever they're selling doesn't work. So I make my daily wardrobe decision. And I dread events like weddings or speaking engagements. I was at a dermatologist 2 weeks ago, actually, and he gave it to me straight. He said, "You know, we're not going to cure you of anything, right? Don't worry, I'm not trying to make some kind of silly connection here as if what is for me a minor irritation somehow relates directly to what for a first century leper would have been lifelong devastation. But there is another connection. I went to the good doctor looking for one thing, an answer, something concrete. And what I got was ambiguity. Make some lifestyle choices, maybe management, the environment. Have you looked for ways to reduce stress? The story that we just read should be a straightforward healing story. Someone's sick, Jesus heals them, life is good. If only it were so simple. No, the healing of a leper in the first chapter of Mark is replete with tension, conflict, sometimes outright contradiction. This has made one seminarian I know, to quote Dr. Seuss, puzzling and puzzling till his puzzler was sore. The account this morning, like so many in our Bible, provides not so much a simple answer, but rather avenues for deeper questions. And this is a good thing. The miracle of this story is not that Jesus somehow transcends our broken human reality, but that he chooses to jump right into the fray. It is a Jesus who walks and breathes and hurts and cries with us. But it's also a Jesus, to quote one of the commentators, who embodies the power and the will of God. It is this very God and very man who stands with us, beside us, and is so moved by the human condition, so touched, that he dares to touch us. Even the part of, no, especially the part of us that we would rather he left ignored. The story isn't simple because life isn't simple, and life is where Jesus meets us. Let's wrestle together with some of the challenges of the text. First of all, leprosy. We don't know much about what's described here, but we can know one thing. It's probably not Hansen's disease, which is what we call leprosy. It could have been any number of sudden onset skin disorders, and the Levitical Code's pretty clear about where lepers are supposed to live. But there are descriptions in the rabbinic literature that also talk about lepers functioning in Jewish life. They could even go to synagogue if there was a screen that separated them. Then there's the form of the healing itself. Is it a healing? Is this a cleansing? Some have said that it reads more like an exorcism. As everyone in our room of seminarians knows, the line lines that we draw between those kinds of events aren't as clear in the first century as we think they are today. But we're seminary students. We can take it back to the Greek. Love preaching to seminary students. Here's a little tip. It gets worse, not better. I remember this bi-yearly ordeal my brothers and I had to endure. Maybe you remember something like this. It was 3 little words that struck fear to every school child, young and old alike. Parent, teacher, conferences. Dum, dum. One of us would post at the window as watchmen, and we'd wait for the parents to return and look at the sidewalk. We'd make idle, nervous conversation, pretend to watch Nickelodeon television. And then my parents are on their way, and right, what's the big question? How do they seem? Are they angry? Are they happy? Are they laughing? Are they scoffing? Because that matters. It matters a lot. The entire evening. In fact, well into the foreseeable future, once the grounding started, was entirely dependent on my parents' temperament, good or bad. The leper asked Jesus if he can be cleansed, and Jesus' emotional response was, okay, so he took some liberties with reading this morning. I left out part of the phrase. Because he was either moved with anger or moved with compassion. That sort of makes a difference. And the reality is, I don't know if we can know. You've got access to Metzger's and other critical works. Look it up. Some source documents say one thing, some say another. You apply something like a majority text principle, you come with one answer. You apply something like most difficult reading first, you get exactly the opposite answer. So Jesus was either really, really angry, or he was deeply moved with compassion. I don't know which is crazier, that such an ambiguity could be allowed to exist at a manuscript level, or that this story could be read both ways and it still makes sense. What a mess. I don't like Mark, but that's okay. I like Jesus. There are similar frustrations with the verbiage that Jesus uses when he speaks to the man who's healed. Our Bibles tend to render it sternly warn. How stern is stern? Confession. I learned my Greek in the classics department. The word used in verse 43, emprim aomai, in a classical sense, it described a horse exhaling violently. The Anchor Bible translated growl. Jesus growled at the man. There's a comforting image for you. This story is challenging at the linguistic level. It doesn't mellow out structurally. The man with leprosy comes to Jesus pleading, heal me. We were paying attention to Kate, right? Isn't that blasphemy? Skin disorders such as leprosy were so difficult to contend with. It was generally assumed only God himself could heal them. One of the rabbis says it this way: it is as difficult to heal a leper as it is to heal the dead. No wonder my dermatologist says he wasn't going to cure me of anything. If we remember back to 2 Kings 5, Naaman shows up with his letter, and the king says, am I God? Even Elijah does that whole go to the river thing, heals him at a distance. Man of God or not, he's not touching a leper. Let's talk about this whole touching thing. True, false. Jesus never sinned. This is where you say true. I'll try another one. Jesus did not come to abolish the law. True. Okay, we're getting it. Last time I read my Old Testament, I got a pretty good impression that touching the unclean was kind of a big no-no. This is the same Jesus who actually tells the former leper, to do the whole Leviticus 14 thing, go to the priest, sacrifice, testimony. You know that drill. So that seems important to Jesus. This is the same Jesus who had previously reached out and touched the unclean. How does that work? Jesus touching the unclean. And worse, the unclean of all. This is cool. One of the guys I read this week put it this way. Instead of the impurity passing from the man to Jesus, the purity of Jesus passes to the man. This is a really good picture. I think it connects. Maybe this is why there's a website. I'm making this up. The top 100 Chuck Norris jokes. You know what I'm talking about, Chuck Norris jokes? Here's one. Chuck Norris jumps into a pool. Chuck Norris doesn't get wet. The water gets Chuck Norris. Are we tracking it here? This one is actually Chuck Norris's personal favorite. Seriously. A rattlesnake once bit Chuck Norris. 3 agonizing days later, the snake died. That's good stuff. I think the reason it resonates is that there's something in us that needs a vision of a hero who is both by our side and wins the fight. I can't read it. Jesus doesn't get leprosy. The leper gets Jesus. His instructions are about as clear as they can be. Seriously, I love preaching the seminary. Maideni, maiden, apace. Did you catch it? Maideni, maiden, double negative. I like to translate these literally. Don't you tell nothing to nobody. So what's the guy's response? He immediately goes out and tells everybody he can find. Maybe that's the whole point. When we encounter the Almighty, sometimes we can't help but go against the flow. Jesus seems almost wanton in his disregard for taboo and ritual when necessary. I think he's very much a Battle of Mobile Bay kind of guy. Darn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. He has no scruples when the law interferes with higher things. So what is up with the whole Leviticus 14 thing anyway? Go to the priest, offer sacrifice, testimony. I thought Jesus was darn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. What's the concern? The ritual described has but one purpose. It's not cleansing. That's God's job. It's to welcome him back. To live in the camp again. To worship at the temple again. You see, God's work is never just skin deep. God's work restores the whole person, the community around him. Maybe that's why this is such a mess. We are not given a simple Jesus because this is not a simple story. We are not given a simple story because we do not live simple lives. We are simply given a promise that we have a Lord who will also walk with us, stand with us, reach out, touch us. This is Jesus at his most human. And at the same time, this is Jesus at his most divine. Okay, seminary people, another pop quiz. Last one. Shortest verse in the Bible.
Jesus wept.
Yeah. And he was weeping.
Lazarus had died.
Because, okay, here we go again. Was it because of their lack of faith? Was it because they were weeping? Was it because he lost a friend? I bring this up because the similarities in the story are really telling. And that would make a really good paper or sermon somewhere else. But for this morning's sake, I'd just like to draw the parallel to make this point. Amongst death and crying, walking up to graves, working in and among the muck and grime and mess that is our existence, this is Jesus' M.O. It's his business, as usual. The crying, the lepers, tax collectors, prostitutes. Anyone read the book Night, Elie Wiesel? If you have, you probably remember a particularly horrifying scene where the guards are executing a small child and making everyone in the camp watch. As they're standing there, the author recalls someone crying out, "Where? Where is God?" And he remembers hearing a small voice inside of himself, offering an answer. There. Up on that gallows. That's where God is. Where is Jesus when a leper comes, pleading, heal me, if you will. Make me clean. Jesus is right there. Jesus is moved to compassion. Jesus is as angry with the disease, the dismay, and the suffering as you or I would be. He's there holding the unclean, touching the untouchable, touching the untouched. He's in the fray. Among the questions, amongst the uncertainty, this is where our Jesus does his business. And here's the kicker. He's right in there inviting us to join him. It was Origen who wrote that Jesus touches the leper in his untouchability so that he might teach us to despise no one. Jesus stands in the mess, the hurting, the moving, touching, being touched, and that is exactly where he wants us who would follow him to be. I can't tell you what this will look like for you. But I can tell you what it looks like for one of my friends. He was in a train station on his way to work, and he sees a man cowering in a corner, and a piece of cardboard next to him with 2 words, hungry, help. So my friend musters up the courage to go over to the man stooping down, says, "Sir, would you like my lunch?" "Yes, thank you." Out comes a bologna sandwich. Puts it in his backpack. A week goes by, another Tuesday, another bologna sandwich. "Yes, thank you." Another backpack. Another week, another Tuesday. My friend's getting wiser. 2 bologna sandwiches, both in the bag. Week by week, 3, 4, 5 sandwiches in the bag, in the bag, in the bag. Eventually, it's just getting the best of my friend. This is great and all. Is this not your time of day to eat? Am I a bad bologna sandwich maker? Come on. They take a short walk to the underpass where there are a dozen or more other men who live there. And he sees this gentleman dispersing the sandwiches. I think Jay says he's up to 22 sandwiches. Where is Jesus in this? I'll tell you where Jesus is. Jesus is up on Monday night making 20 bologna sandwiches. Because tomorrow he's going to get in the fray. Because tomorrow is a Tuesday.